Thank you for staying tuned to Uganda Broadcasting Corporation Television, where we inspire Uganda. This is a special talk show sponsored by the Uganda Judicial Service Commission. And the Judicial Service Commission is an independent commission established by the Constitution of Uganda in the year 1995. Well, here to discuss all this and more is Mr. Simon Mugisa. He's a Principal Legal Officer, Education and Public Affairs for the Judicial Service Commission. And better still, he's tasked tonight to talk about the regulation of money lending business as a whole. For those of you who are just joining us, we usually have these talk shows every single Monday. The Judicial Service Commission feels that it's important for them to be the bridge between the people of Uganda and the law. So kindly listen in. Just remember that you always have a toll-free number. We shall be flashing it on our screens so that you can contact them from the hours of 8 a.m. all the way to 5 p.m. You're tuned into UBC, where we inspire Uganda. Without further ado, I have to introduce Mr. Simon Mugisa. Mr. Mugisa, how was your week in a nutshell? I haven't seen you for a whole week.
Thank you, Jane. Good evening. And good evening, our viewers. My week has been fine.
Yes.
I've moved in various parts of the country. We were in a patch. Then we went to Chankwanzi and a few other places for sensitization,
yes,
similar to this one.
Yes.
Yeah.
And why is the Judicial Service Commission still relevant? We always talk about this whenever we start the talk show. Why is it still relevant?
Yeah, it is relevant because our country is governed, is ruled by law.
True.
That means every passing day, possibly a new law will come into place. Therefore, the people need to know.
Yeah.
The people need to know so that they can comply with it, they can abide with it, they can do what is expected of them by the law. And this is where the Judicial Service Commission comes in to sensitize the people, to tell them what is happening. Yeah.
We talked about the toll-free number for the Judicial Service Commission. For those of you who them, the number is 0800 100 222, 0800 100 222, or 0800 100 221, or 0800 100 221. Today we're discussing a very important topic, the regulation of money lending in the laws of Uganda, and perhaps how money lending is used in Uganda and those who play a pivotal role in it. And it is pretty much an occurrence in Ugandan nature. Mr. Mugisa, what is money lending for someone who tonight might not know what the whole principle is about?
Okay, I'll give two definitions. One, the definition according to the law. So according to the law, a money lender is a company which is licensed under the Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions and Money Lending Act.
Yes.
But now that people will ask, now what is that?
Yes.
So in a simple way, in a layman's way, or in a user way, we can say these bodies which are not banks, which are not microfinance institutions, which are not circles, that also extend credit to people. So, because we know banks lend money, we know circles lend money, and we also have microfinance institutions that lend money. But all those have different regulation regime. Now, outside those, there are companies which will be lending money, and they are the majority where they, as the common people, can quickly run for credit. Those are the ones which are regulated under this law we are talking about.
Okay, under the Tier 4 Microfinance Institutions and Money Lenders Act of 2006. It clearly defines, 2016, it clearly defines in Uganda who is a money lender. Now, many people have been asking, so as an individual, let's say as Jane Kasumba as a person, I can't be a money lender like it was in the past and operate a money lending business as an individual outside of a company?
Yes, presently it is only companies that can be licensed to carry out the business of money lending. So if you want to to engage into that business, you have to incorporate a company, and then you can seek a license. Yeah.
Okay, very interesting indeed. And you also talked about those that are excluded from being a money lender. Those, of course, companies that already carry out business of banking or insurance, a society, a recooperative society is registered under the Cooperative Societies Act, and a body corporate incorporated or empowered by an act of parliament to lend money in accordance with that act. Those cannot be money lending institutions,
Yes.
as per this law.
Yes.
So someone might ask, Mr. Mugisa, who supervises the money lending business?
Thank you. The money lending business now, there is a fairly new regulatory body, which is called the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority.
Yes.
Which supervises the money lenders, among others. Yeah.
Okay. The Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority, where can it be found?
They have their offices on Rwenzori
Yes.
Towers, Block 6, Plot 6, Nakasero, and they are on Block B, on the ground floor. That's where the authority is. It is setting up, it is fairly new, but that's where they can be found.
Indeed, they're fairly new, because before people were just lending, you just had money lenders who were operating, many were operating outside of the law. And of course, this cannot no longer be the case.
Yes, there was a law then regulating them, Money Lenders Act. But of course, many of them did not use to fulfill the requirement. In that law, there was a provision for obtaining a certificate from the court, and then you go to the district commissioner for a license. But most of them used to end with that certificate from court, and then carry out that business of money lending, which was itself not really lawful.
Which was not lawful.
Yeah.
So now the money lending business, perhaps if you're interested in going into the money lending business in Uganda, you must know that you will be supervised by the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority. Like Mr. Mugisa has talked about just a few seconds ago, he said it's setting up, it's new in nature, and of course on our scrolls we'll be letting you know where exactly they're located. Now, one may ask, Mr. Mugisa, what are the functions of the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority in relation to the money lending business? Because I know, I'm sure, they do a lot more than just regulating money lenders. Yeah. So what are the functions in relation to money lending?
Yes, as regards money lending, the first function they have is to grant licenses, also to renew licenses, and also revoke licenses where need be. That is one. The second one is to maintain a register of money lenders. All the bodies that they regulate who are money lenders, they maintain a register for that matter. The third one is to sensitize the public about money lending business. And there are many issues that they may need to address, legal and economic, and other ways. The other one is to conduct inspections and examination of books of money lenders. You know, if you are carrying out your business, this supervisor, this regulator is empowered to see that you are doing your work in accordance with the law. And also, they can conduct an inquiry into money lending business. For the good of the economy, they can undertake a study, they can do an inquiry to see how the business is going, how the users are benefiting, and things like that.
One who may be interested in starting up a money lending business might wonder, how is inspection done? What do they look out for when they're carrying out an inspection as a Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority?
As we shall be seeing, there are many things the money lender is supposed to do. One, maintain books of accounts, and in accordance with the law. So the regulatory authority will need to know, is this person complying? Two, when they license you, you are supposed to operate. They license you as a business, but also a place where you operate, and also a name. So some inspection. They want to see that you are complying with those things. And three, to see that you are also lending the money according to the requirements of the law. Yeah, might be as regards interest, as we shall be seeing, as regards principal, as regards accepting, issuing receipts, all that kind of thing.
Someone who might be watching this program and interested greatly in this business, the business of money lending, will ask themselves, and of course the question will be directed to you, Mr. Mugisa, how can one apply for a money lender's license?
Yes, a money lender's license must be applied for in writing.
Yes.
So you don't just go and say, I want a money lender's license. You must apply for it. But on that application, it should be accompanied by a certificate of incorporation.
Of the company.
Of the company
that
is applying. Basically, it is the company that must apply. So you'll be applying either as a manager or a director on behalf of that company. That will also require you to file, or together with the application, a resolution setting out the particulars of the directors. Now they are very much interested in who is managing, who's running, or who's behind a company that lends money. You must also file the particulars of the secretary of the company. You must file the name of the company that is applying, and you're obliged to operate under that name. You're not allowed to use another name to carry out that business. You should also show the address, physical and postal address where you're going to conduct that business from.
And there must be a prescribed fee, right?
Yes, there must be. It should also be accompanied by a prescribed fee. You are going to ask how much is it? Yes, at the moment, as we said, they are still working out on the details of how much will be paid.
Okay, so you've heard it, all the requirements for you to get a license. If you're interested in the money lending business, first of all, you must approach them as a company and not as an individual. And the Uganda Micro Finance Authority is that authority that's tasked to regulate all money lending businesses in Uganda as per the Money Lenders Act as amended. And you can find the Uganda Microfinance Authority at Rwenzori Towers, Plot 6, Nakasero Road, Block B, ground floor. That is on PO Box 11545, Kampala, Uganda. That's Rwenzori Towers, Plot 6, Nakasero Road, Block B, ground floor, PO Box 11545, Kampala. That is the offices of the Uganda Microfinance Authority, where of course it governs the regulation for money lending business and also offers the necessary licenses. Is there a time limit for the issuance of this license, Mr. Mugisa?
Yes, upon application, the authority, we are talking about the Uganda Microfinance Regulatory Authority, which we shall keep referring to as the authority, is supposed to issue a license within 3 months. 3 months, yeah.
Is there a time perhaps when it might be delayed? Perhaps if they have very many offers, can that delay the time span? Or is it must be 3 months, within the 3 months
Well,
period?
the law requires that you are issued with a license within 3 months.
Okay.
After receiving your application.
What are the general conditions of a money lender's license, especially for a person who is interested in this money lending business?
Yes, you should know. The first thing is that it's usually, it will end on the 31st day of the year. I was going to say a year, but that doesn't follow. Regardless, you can apply at the beginning of the year, in the middle, towards the quarter, but every year in which it is issued, the expiry date is going to be
the 31st of December.
31st of December.
Someone who might be watching might be wondering, why such a limited time span? Because, for example, if I got the license in August, that means that I have to reapply again the following year because it will end on December the 31st.
I suppose it is for uniformity.
Yeah.
If this body is going to do an evaluation, maybe of the market or of the players, you want to do it within a certain period of time. And that is often done. I cannot think of any other reason why it should be done that way. Yeah. Just like the trading licenses are issued, regardless of the month you take it out, it will end with the end of the year.
So any other general conditions of the moneylender's license that a person must know who's watching this program?
You are only authorized to operate under the name which has been given that license and the place which has been licensed. Now, this idea of being a moneylender in one geographical location and maybe you are mobile in wherever you go, you are lending money is not allowed. The customer
You are a mobile money lending business.
Yeah, mobile money lending is
not acceptable.
Yeah. I suppose it is to enable the regulator to inspect and make sure that things are in order. Because when you go to borrow money, you're supposed to sign a contract.
Yeah.
When you pay, you are supposed to be issued with a receipt. And all those records have to be maintained at that office. And
the issue about the name. So the name must be the name as registered.
The name as licensed.
As licensed, yes.
Yes, as licensed, because you can have a company in a different name, but you have what you call a business name, not necessarily the name by which you are known. Yeah. That kind of thing is allowed, but then it should come out clearly, because you could be so and so trading as this. That is permissible. But that name must not change if that's what appears on your money lending license. So the person who's watching this program has known now the general conditions required for the money lender's license to be given to them. Mr. Mugisa, I cannot leave you before we take the break. I cannot but ask you this question. When may the authority, that is the Uganda Microfinance Authority, refuse to grant someone a license? Yeah, sometimes they may not be satisfied that the people behind, the managers, the directors, are of good conduct. Are of good repute? Yes, good conduct. Good conduct. Yes, okay. They can, in that case, they can refuse to license you. So that's why they're interested in the particulars of the directors. Where the applicant or the company is convicted of an offense involving embezzlement or other financial impropriety, it can also refuse, because you are largely dealing with money. So if you're embezzling, you are likely to cause some harm in the business and in the industry. And of course, where you fail to comply with the requirements of applying as we had talked about, in writing and accompanying your application with the necessary documents as we had cited. Yeah. Okay. Already found out that the authority, that's the Uganda Microfinance Authority, can refuse to grant someone a money lender's license. However, there are always remedies to a rule. What can a person who has been denied a license by the Uganda Microfinance Authority do? Or is it totally a lost cause? It's not a lost cause. If you feel aggrieved by the refusal to be granted a license, yes, you can appeal to the High Court, and the High Court will look into the matter. Yeah.
Okay, on that note, I hope you have imbibed or understood for this first part the regulations surrounding money lending in Uganda. This program is proudly sponsored by the Judicial Service Commission. They want to be the bridge between the Ugandan people and the law in Uganda. They say, know the law, learn the law, imbibe the law, so that at the end of the day, you may know your rights. We're going for a quick commercial break. You're tuned into UBC, where we inspire Uganda. We'll be right back. Well, thank you for staying tuned to Uganda Broadcasting Corporation Television, where we inspire Uganda. This program is proudly sponsored by the Judicial Service Commission here in Uganda. They aim to be the bridge between the people and the law in this country. So a toll-free number will be available on our screens right now as we speak, and that number can be dialed, and you can call them from the hours of 8 a.m. all the way to 5 p.m. every single day. That's starting from tomorrow. Every working hour, you can certainly reach out to the Judicial Service Commission, and they'll have a person on standby to certainly clarify on some of the issues that we're talking about on this talk show. Today, we're talking about the regulation of the money lending business in Uganda. The money lending business in Uganda is huge, and we've been talking about the act that regulates it, the fact that now money lending, for you to be allowed to carry out money lending as a business, you must be licensed. We have talked about the authority, and also, most importantly, you must be a company. And we have talked about ways in which a license can be obtained, and when, of course, a license might not be granted to you. Mr. Mugisa, in a nutshell, the money lending business in Uganda is huge, to say the least. And regulating it is something that has been necessary. And when we continue on our talk show, Mr. Mugisa, when can the authority refuse to renew the license?
Yes, the authority will refuse to renew a license if there has been a breach. The applicant has not complied with the provisions of the law, of the act, as we have been talking about it. And also, a license might be given upon certain conditions.
Yes.
So if you have not complied with those conditions, the authority reserves a right to not to renew your license.
Not to renew your license.
Yeah.
And we talked about the license being renewed every single year, expiring at the end of every single year, December 31st to be precise. So they can refuse to renew your license. Someone who's watching this program might want to know, when can the authority revoke your license?
Yes, revokes means cancelling
Cancellation,
your license. The license has been issued, but for some reason it is revoked. This can happen in case you fail to commence the business. You apply for a license,
you get
and
the
for
license
12 months after the license has been issued, you are not able to carry out the business. It can be revoked.
Yes.
Secondly, if the company becomes insolvent, it means you are not able to pay your debts. So in that case, it can be revoked, because anytime you'll be in trouble of closure. Thirdly, if you've been wound up for any reason, that means you have ceased completely from operating. They can revoke your license. And you know, winding up could be voluntary, it could be involuntary. So during the subsistence, the company could be having a license, but then the company winds up. In that case, the authority will revoke it. If you conduct your business in a manner that is detrimental to the interests of the public, and now that is the economists are the ones who know that better, But even as you lend, you must exercise some ethical standards.
Yes.
So that you do not injure the other members of the public through your actions.
That's a very good point, Mr. Mugisa. Give us an example
of
what you just said.
How you can
be injurious.
Pardon?
How you can injure someone
how you can injure
in the course of your business.
There are several ways. There are really several ways where you can apply an ethical methods and you injure the interests of the public. For example, the way you lend, the duration you lend, the securities you take, and the way you handle them can all work to the detriment of the public.
Yeah.
So that's what the regulator will be looking at. Are you maintaining ethical standards
some
as you carry
fairness.
out your business? Yeah.
Mm.
It will also, it can also be revoked if it contravenes the law, which we are talking about. But also, if you transfer or assign your license to another body which does not comply, or you could start off as a money lender, but you drift and do some other business altogether.
So you cease to carry on the money lending business?
Yes. Then you will be, that license can also be revoked.
Okay. Mr. Mugisa, for a person who is interested in this kind of business, one might ask, what kind of contract must I sign?
The contract of money lending must be in writing. So if you go to borrow money, you must make sure that the contract is in writing. In addition to that, there are terms which must be specifically spelled out in your contract of borrowing. One is the date when the money is disbursed to you. You know, you can write a contract, I'm lending, but the money is not given. So the contract should be able to spell out when the money has been disbursed to the borrower. The contract must be very clear to spell out the principal. The principal, that is the money, the actual money,
amount.
that is the amount that you have borrowed. And then the contract must spell out the interest rate in terms of percentages and per year. It should clearly show what interest you are going to pay in out of 100 in percentage terms, and that percentage should be computed per year. You know, with the money lenders, the practice has been more towards a certain percentage per month. Say 3% per month. But now they are saying compute it in percentage terms.
And it must
for
be
a duration
clearly earmarked in the contract.
Yes.
Okay.
For a duration of 1 year. You should show the securities that have been given. The security for the loan is this, and clearly identified. Should also show the terms under which this loan is to be repaid.
Yes. And of course, the nature of guarantorship is also very important, and a right to early repayment.
Yes, many lenders don't want you to pay early. If you have agreed on a period, they will charge you up to that period. But if a person has, if you have lending money for 1 year and the person happens to pay you after 3 months, you should not charge the whole interest for 1 year. You should compute for the period he has used that money.
Let me ask you this question. Can a money lender charge an interest, perhaps in a case where there's a default or there's a delay?
The law now prohibits that you don't charge for default.
Okay.
You can maintain a certain rate, and when somebody begins defaulting, you revise the rate in order to accommodate that risk. The law prohibits that. It also prohibits you charging interest on interest. That's what is called compounding interest. So any contract of money lending which allows a lender to charge a higher interest because of default, or which allows compounding of interest, is illegal and it is unenforceable.
One might ask, Mr. Mugisa, is a money lender under a duty, a fiduciary duty, to issue receipts and keep records?
Yes, a money lender under this act is actually obligated to issue receipts whenever the borrower pays back an amount of money. He's also supposed to keep records which will show the principal, the interest, when the payment is done, and the securities that have been given.
Okay.
Yeah.
So records are very important.
Yeah, extremely.
Okay. When can a court reopen a transaction of a money lender?
Yeah, sometimes you might think you have finished, you've borrowed money, and somehow you've been forced, or the security has been realized, and you think the matter is over. But whenever a lender or a borrower goes to court to apply for the enforcement or for reliefs regarding a money lending transaction, the court will always reopen the transaction if it feels that the interest charged was excessive, or the terms were unconscionable and they did not follow the law. Basically, if there is general unfairness in the transaction, the court, or where the court feels that in a court of equity, that's the one that is looking at fair circumstances, fairness in the matter, a relief would be given. The court will always reopen a money lending transaction.
Someone might ask, what can the borrower do if the money lender evades him or for purposes of receiving his payments?
Sometimes we have heard that you borrow money from a money lender, on the due date, you go to look for him to pay.
You can't find him.
And the person hides away from you.
Yeah.
And because you agreed that you'll have to pay by a certain date, past that he goes for the enforcement on the security. And then you end up losing. But what you can do now is you go and pay that money to the Uganda Microfinance Institutions Authority.
Yes.
The authority we've been talking about, which is at Rwenzori Towers. And when you pay that money, it's deemed that it is the lender actually who has paid it there.
Yes.
So you have paid on his behalf.
Okay, that is a very important point.
Yes.
Because money lenders are known to be very, very evasive. And I think you need to re-emphasize that point. If, for example, you owe a money lender money, and the due date has come upon you, and you can't find the money lender, or he's being evasive, then you can go ahead and make your payment to the authority we've been talking about. And it will be deemed under the law as to have been a payment back to the money lender. And I think that is very important, because we hear some heinous cases of people have their money, they're ready to pay back the money lender, and the money lender, in slang words, is angazi. He's taken off, has disappeared. He's waiting for the enforcement. So that's good to note. And is this why, for example, there were these amendments to the law, so that it would have more beneficial aspects towards it, especially in regulation to money lending?
Not exclusively, but certainly that was one of the mischief, or that was one of the areas, the gap that was in the old law that has been bridged in this new law.
Okay. Now, one might also ask, is it permissible for a moneylender to levy charges for expenses incidental for the borrowing?
Sometimes when people want to hide the real cost of borrowing,
yes,
they'll put it in other charges.
Yes.
And cost these fees, that fees, before you start even paying the interest itself. So now that is not permissible. All the costs must be in the interest. So it's unlawful to charge to include those other charges. Yeah.
When we come to promissory notes, what is the penalty for taking a promissory note in which the amount is left blank or not necessarily truly stated?
So let's make it very simple for our viewers.
Yeah.
That usually or sometimes when someone is borrowing money and he doesn't have collateral, chattel or land, they'll say, you give me a check. Because they know if you issue a check and it bounces, they can use it at police to arrest you for issuing a false check. And you don't have to put in an amount of money. He simply keeps it, and in the event of default, that's when he writes in the money and he banks it. It's now unlawful to take a promissory note that is blank. So in other words, if you are taking a promissory note as the security for the loan, the amount must be filled there at the time you issue it.
Yeah.
It's unlawful to do that. Similarly, for you to write a contract which is not true in material particular, for example, a person borrows 100,000, but because somebody wants to disguise the interest he's charging, he says it is an agreement for borrowing or for lending 160,000, having factored in the interest. So that you can see the particulars are not truthful. That too is unlawful.
For the sake of time, before I take two messages or tweets, because of the sake of time, your last question, Mr. Mugisa, what offenses are common in money lending?
It is now an offense to carry out a business of money lending without a money lender's license.
Okay.
It is an offense not to state the truth, like we've just said. It's an offense to take a blank promissory note. It's an offense to assign a debt arising from money lending without informing the assignee that that debt is subject to the provisions of this act. Yeah.
Okay, let's thank you very much for that, Mr. Mugisa. Very interesting topic, the regulation of money lending business in Uganda. And indeed, our scroll is telling you about the necessary information that you might need to know about the Money Lenders Act as amended, and better still, about the very poignant points that Mr. Samuel Mugisa was able to address during this 1 hour talk show. Mr. Mugisa, let me take these two tweets that are coming in. Many are coming in as we speak right now. The first one is, where can I find this authority that you're talking about? I will certainly address that on the address of the authority. And secondly, this person, that one was from Jim. This one comes in from Bob, from Robert, actually. Robert Rara, and he's asking, I borrowed money to the tune of 100 million, and my due date is up. I borrowed it from a money lending institution, and now I am in hiding. What can I do? Yeah.
You are in hiding. You better get out of your hiding.
No, you will address that question. We have another one, last one. Let's take this one in. It's coming in from Susan, and this one is, I never ever knew that money lenders have to operate under a company. I thought that I could just go up to someone and borrow money. Yeah.
Okay. Now you have known, especially if you are the one carrying out the business. It's important that you have a company incorporated and also you obtain a license. Because if you do, your transaction is illegal.
It's illegal, yeah.
But you are also committing an offense. Now, for the gentleman who's hiding, it's not useful to hide. You can always negotiate with your creditors. You can have the loan rescheduled. But under the current regime, you will be obliged to keep paying the interest on the principal.
And we had talked about the interest, yes.
Yes, however, the biggest problem that we need to avoid is transactions which are secured by a legal mortgage. They're exempted from the operation of this law. A legal or even equitable mortgage. If the security for that borrowing is immovable property, they will be exempted from the operation of this law. Also, if, for example, there is a chattel is some other valuable securities movable assets. If it's affected by a chattel transfer, it will also be exempted if the interest rate is below 9%. 9%, simply because there is a law regulating chattel mortgages. Yeah.
And let me take this last one.
So if the gentleman put in land, he should come out because his land will be sold, and that transaction is not regulated by this law.
This one comes in from Gregory, and on a final note, he's saying that I did get a license for my money lending business. However, mid-year, I think halfway within the duration of the license, I decided to carry out another business in addition to the money lending business. Will this lead to the revocation of my license?
No, that wouldn't lead to revocation, because a company is allowed to do all those things for which it is not denied, and that are allowed in their articles and memorandum of association. So you can carry on whatever you want, but the businesses must be separated, because when the authorities come to inspect, they need to know how the money lending business is moving. Yeah.
And of course, on a final note, we had one from I think it was Jim in the beginning. He sent in a tweet and he wanted to know where exactly are the offices of the Microfinance Authority located. Well, the Uganda Microfinance Authority is located at the Rwenzori Towers, Plot 6, Nakasero Road, Block B, ground floor. That's PO Box 11545, Kampala. That's Rwenzori Towers, Plot 6, Nakasero Road, Block B, ground floor, PO Box 11545, Kampala, Uganda. And why that's very important is because the Uganda Microfinance Authority is directly in charge of the regulation of money lending business in Uganda. On that note, Mr. Mugisa, for those who are just joining us, you've been watching the Uganda Judicial Service Commission talk show here on UBC. But most importantly, we've been talking about the regulation in money lending business in Uganda today. Mr. Mugisa, as a parting note or a parting shot, what would you want someone perhaps who's trying to start a money lending business to know, and maybe a person who is a client of a money lending business to know as well?
The important thing is you need to know is if you need to do that business, you need to be incorporated, you need to have a license, and you need to watch out for the interest rates that you charge and the compliance with the law. Because if you do not comply with the law, most likely you'll be committing an offense somewhere, or you would be rendering your transactions unenforceable, and you don't want that to happen to you when you are spending your money.
So at the end of the day, there must be confidence before the law, and that the law is here to protect those who are using the money lending business.
Yes, both the money lender
to regulate it.
Yes, both the money lender and the borrowers are protected under this law.
Okay.
Yeah.
A special thank you to Mr. Samuel Mugisa. Mr. Samuel Mugisa is from the Judicial Service Commission here in Uganda. The Judicial Service Commission sees it fit to ensure that they become the bridge between the people of Uganda and the law. They say, know the law, imbibe the law, abide by the law, and learn your rights. On behalf of Mr. Samuel Mugisa and myself, Jane Kasumba, and the entire team here at UBC, who ensures that you're able to get local quality content like this that's here to educate and guide the public of Uganda, we bid you a good evening. Remember, at the top of the hour, Michael Jordan Lukomwa and Rhoda Ngonzi will be on at 10 with the news tonight. Good night.